Well, there are six contenders to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. Liberal leadership contenders have paid their deposits, signed up members. Well, now all that's left is the voting. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Warren Kinsella and Brian Lilley. Okay, Warren, here are the six contenders. We're just going to show a photo of them. And as it remains, as we have all talked about, Mark Carney still is the perceived frontrunner. There has been some issues with at least one candidate where the party has said that they are not able to run. That's caused a little bit of excitement, but nonetheless, is this still a snore fest of a leadership race, or is there anything exciting happening here?
It's a total snore. Everybody's in a coma. And that's the last thing the Liberal Party needed is they needed some excitement. That's why you have leadership campaigns, in part, is to excite people and get them to pay attention to you. And, you show them how you're renewed and you're changed and you've learned your lesson. They haven't done any of that. Carney is winning. Carney is going to be the next unelected prime minister, which is a problem in and of itself. That's something that we shouldn't accept as a people, but he is going to win. And he's running a classic low bridge strategy. Like I challenge anybody to Google his position on any issue, and you're going
Hmm.
to get a whole bunch of blank results because he's
Hmm.
just not taking a position on anything. And that's a failure at the best of times, but it's particularly a failure now when we're facing so many challenges from the United States and so on. We need some leadership, and we're not getting it. Krista Freeland, a lot of people thought would do a lot better. She hasn't. I think it's a classic case of, Brutus may have taken out Caesar, but Brutus never got to be the emperor. And
Right.
that tends to be the rule in politics, and it applies to her as well. They're all grateful that she was the one who took out Trudeau, but they don't want to hand over the reins to her. So they're going to give it to the guy who lived in England for a few years. The other people who are in the race are essentially nobodies. In some cases, they're well-intentioned nobodies, but it's not serious. It's really a race between two people. My
Hmm.
big problem about it is what Brian and I and others and our paper's been writing about for a long time. Their membership rules are a joke. One of
That's
my
right.
readers got in touch with me yesterday and registered as a 14-year-old from India named Yahweh Sinwar. And that person is now a member of the Liberal Party of Canada entitled to vote. That is a joke. And that happening in the same week that Madam Justice Hogue released a report on foreign interference, identifying leadership contests and nomination contests as one of the main points of foreign interference. It's shameful. The Liberal Party of Canada, they're going to present Mark Carney to the world and say, look what we've got. And it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
some 14-year-old in India voted for him. It's not serious.
We as Canadians, Brian, we tolerate a lot. We put up with far too much, I think, and don't push back against our government nearly enough. But there is certainly something to Warren's points about likely being Carney, an unelected prime minister. We're having an election in Ontario that nobody really wants, and the one election that we're not having, Brian, is the one federally, and it could be months away yet. But the question has always been, why would Mark Carney do this and then come to Parliament only to be defeated to get into an election? But now there's musings about other deals that could be made. Do you think Carney is prepared to make another deal or even make another deal with the Liberals?
The chatter I'm getting from liberals is that the plan is anoint Carney. And
Hmm.
by the way, we just published a Leger poll this week that showed it's still an 18-point lead for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, 43 to 25. Not a lot of people, overly excited about the Liberal leadership. But when they asked those people who said they would vote Liberal, who do you want to win? It was 57% Carney, 17% Chrystia Freeland, 4% Karina Gold. They didn't even ask about Frank Baylis, Ruby Dalla, or who's the sixth? I've just out of my mind.
It
Uh,
doesn't matter.
Chandra Arya.
Baptiste.
So they didn't even ask about them. Mark Carney, 57%. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's going to go in and become a leader without a mandate to negotiate with someone who has a mandate down in Washington. Last time this happened was 1984. Sure, we had Paul Martin take over from Jean Chrétien. without going to the public. We had Kim Campbell take over from Brian Mulroney without going to the public, but they were elected officials at least. John Turner was the last guy to do this. It didn't work out well for the Liberals in Turner in 1984 when they were swept by Mulroney and the Conservatives. But this is a very different time. As Warren said, the Foreign Interference Commission. We know that China interfered in Han Don's nomination in Don Valley North. Do you think that they're going to try and interfere in leadership selection of a G7 country? Of course. So many problems around all of this going down. And as far as Carney goes, okay, what we do know of his policies are his past statements. We're all talking about the need to expand our oil exports. Well, Carney was against Northern Gateway. Carney was against Energy East. Carney's against LNG exports. If they come from Canada, he's fine with pipelines and LNG exports in other countries. And we know that because his firm Brookfield, which he was chairman of, invested in all these things, and he made millions off of these things. But in Canada, he opposes them. He is the founder of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. He is a net zero zealot. And so he believes in shutting down Canada's oil industry and our resource industry writ large, which is developing those is how we're going to be able to pivot away from 76% of our exports going to the Americans.
Well, Warren, a spoiler is always fun in any leadership race. I was hoping that there might be some spoiler in here. We know certainly the former Liberal MP, Ruby Dalla, is taking shots at Mark Carney, that he is just Justin Trudeau 2.0. But many, many years ago, when Gerald Ford became president, he made a speech to the American people and said, I know I wasn't put here with your votes. Mark Carney is going to have to say something very similar to Canadians and say, you haven't put me here. I understand that. So reasonably, shouldn't he want to be there with the will of the Canadian people? Or is this just, I'm going to ride this out. Eventually, we're going to say Trump's tariffs are an emergency. We're going to spend all this money. How do you see that playing out?
Well, and with Gerald Ford, who I had the great pleasure of meeting one time, he was on a national ballot. He was the vice presidential candidate. So he has much more legitimacy that Carney is going to have. Like we should never have a prime minister who's unelected, but we particularly should not have an unelected prime minister in the middle of an existential crisis where the country is facing threats on the trade front and a president of the United States saying he wants to take us over as the 51st state. So you're clothed with credibility by the Constitution, by your own caucus, and by the vote of the people. And so, Carney may have the support of his new caucus. He may have the support of the Constitution in the sense that, he's the choice of the caucus that has the most seats in the House of Commons, but he does not have the endorsement of the people. He does not have their legitimacy. I mean, Jamie Baptiste, who was the name that Brian couldn't find, understandably, he's a Métis from Nova Scotia, is the other candidate in this race.
Oh, we've written about him before.
Previously famous for making racist and sexist and homophobic social media posts. He's got more legitimacy than Mark Carney does because he at least has a seat in the House of Commons. So it is important. And I think this is something that Poilievre is going to zero in on when Carney wins, not if, but when, and say, you just don't have any credibility representatives. You were not elected, you were selected. And there's a big difference.
Well, Brian, last word to you. The cause of all this calamity, of course, is Justin Trudeau, who seems to just want to go travel around the world. Maybe he's on his farewell tour. He's not sure if he's got a month left or how much time he really has left to be prime minister. So he's got to travel around, spend as much of our money as he possibly can, I suppose. We don't know what his future holds. But this team that Mark Carney is forming, certainly he has a majority of the caucus that have come out and to support him. This iteration of Trudeau's cabinet, he's got coming out and supporting him. That's got a sting for Freeland for sure. But do Canadians recognize this is a carbon copy version of what we have just had for the last 9 years, but perhaps in a better presentation because there's a higher degree of is perhaps competence with Mark Carney?
You know, a lot of people don't know that AC/DC had two lead singers over the years because they sound a lot alike, and the band played the same music and they sang the same songs. I don't want to insult AC/DC, but switching out Mark Carney for Justin Trudeau is like when they brought in Brian Johnson after Bon Scott died. There's not much of a difference. The whole band is still the same. You've even
Mhm.
got the guys in the background, Jerry Butts. Not Christopher Freeland, Katie Telford, Andrew Bevan, they're all the same. So don't tell me that
Senator Telford to you, Lilley.
don't tell me that the Gerard Kennedy wing of the Liberal Party that put Trudeau in is not the same one putting Carney in. But you asked something earlier that neither Warren or I answered, and I want to allude to it because I have been hearing from liberals who are gleeful at the thought that yes, Mark Carney is going to be selected, not elected, as Warren said. And then come March, they will strike a deal with the NDP and govern not till October. They're talking about governing into the new year, into 2026, which constitutionally they can do. That this is the plan that some liberals are endorsing around Carney, declare a national emergency, let him govern for a year, year and a half, and then go to the polls when it's constitutionally required in 2026 instead of the fixed election date law. I think Canadians would lose their minds over that, but there would
Mhm.
be very little that we can do. Now, Jagmeet Singh is just out saying he wants Parliament to be recalled now so they can pass a workers' package, and he will support the government in passing a workers' package, but he maintains he's still going to vote them down in March. Well, what's going to happen in March? The Liberals won't recall Parliament now. They'll come back on March 24th. They'll put forward a package for a national emergency. And once that's passed with the help of the NDP, they'll probably prorogue again until at least the summer and then try and ride out this national emergency.
Well, Canada, they said that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy, but it looks like those threats to our democracy by preventing us from getting to the polls is happening right here in our own backyard. Well, let us know what you think in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel and go to the TorontoSun.com. You'll find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.